Is it your off season? Or are you still following the Stanley Cup playoffs with zeal and keeping track of the American Hockey League? We're winding things down on the professional front, but most of us are well into our summer and training season. Training already underway. It's In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Langley. Darren Millard, along with the co-founders of In Goal Magazine, Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison. Are you guys into your off season, or are you right now still clinging to the playoffs? Woody, where are you?
I'm definitely still clinging to the playoffs because I'm covering the Canucks and Oilers. So how much longer I cling to them, we shall see. Game 7 tomorrow night. Been a long time since I've covered a Game 7, Darren. As a matter of fact, the last one was 2011 between the Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins, which was, people think that we in the media become cheerleaders for the team we cover. And I always say that we don't cheer for teams, but you do cheer for good people and good stories. And 2011 covering Game 7 was tough because you're on deadline. I was working for the Associated Press at the time. You have to file the story and get down to the room and do your interviews. And so where I'm down in the first room I'm into is Roberto Luongo, who I'd gotten to know quite well and am quite fond of as a person and as a goaltender. And to see that heartbreak was really tough. But then minutes later, I'm on the ice with Tim Thomas and the Stanley Cup. And another guy who I know the reputation around him since those days has changed, but a guy who was very good to us here at In Goal Magazine, did charity projects with us, mask giveaways, steered those mask giveaways and charity contests in a direction so that any fan could afford it as opposed to just the highest bidder buying it. And, was quite fond of Tim as well. So it can be quite emotional to sort of see both sides of those emotions, one after the other, with people that you've gotten to know over the years, like the agony, the heartbreak, and then the joy on the other side. This is only the second round, so it won't be quite as severe, but I will be facing that tomorrow night.
Sounds like he's conflicted already. Hutch, where are you? Are you still involved, or are you into the off season?
Betwixt and between. Spent this week up in Kelowna where my son was doing a little bit of off-season training. And then on the way home, I don't know how many people realize I live on Vancouver Island, which is a roughly 2-hour ferry ride from Vancouver. And so on the way back, we're sitting in the car watching as much of the Canucks game as we could. And then we lost our cell signal, went upstairs where everybody else sits in the ferry, only to discover we were on one of the only boats that didn't have a television. So it was an angst-filled ride back to the island before we could find out what had happened in the game. But it was a game a little bit disappointing. We were cheering as Vancouver fans. We weren't just cheering for stories. Although we like both the Edmonton goalies, so we're cheering for them as well. It's a bit of a toughie. So yeah, we're still, Darren's still being hockey fans to an extent, but also in full preparation mode for next season.
I want to dive into the situation with the Edmonton crease. But first, if you are still going, you can take advantage of NHL Sense Arena to fine-tune your skills. And if you're into the offseason and you're having trouble getting ice or there's no ice around, a real opportunity exists with NHL Sense Arena to keep those skills sharp.
Doesn't it, though? Sense Arena sponsors our feature interview every week, guys. But if you hang on a little while later, you're going to find out a way that maybe it's useful in relation to our parent segment. Just a little teaser on that one. One of the coolest things about Sense Arena is that you can actually put other people in goal with you. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, even. We've taken it around and shown it to various goalie coaches who want to find out what it's like out there. And we've had NHL goalies tell us that they've done the same with their family, friends, teammates. So it's a really cool opportunity to share the game with people that you know. And it's so real that you're giving them the full experience of being in net. More importantly, though, it's so real that you can get incredible training this summer, even when you don't have access to the ice, like we know Woody did while on a surfing vacation. We did up at Lake Louise in the Rockies. Sense Arena is there with you all summer long, whether you've got access to ice or not. You will be having fun, and you'll still be able to tell everybody that you're working really hard at becoming a better goalie. So go grab NHL Sense Arena today, and you can take your training this summer to the next level, boys.
The NHL censoring a feature interview. Matt Davis from DU, as the 10-time NCAA champion, he's not the NCAA champion for 10 times, but he's a 2-time NCAA champion. The goaltender joins us, learned the ropes as a support role, and then has won it in just a splendid, spectacular performance this past year. And there's a lot to get to with Matt Davis in a fascinating interview with Kevin Woodley, a whole bunch of different areas that he will take you down that path with, including how to smother the puck without using your hands. That conversation topic is still baffling, and I found myself, you have to listen to it really to understand it, but I found myself sitting on the couch with my hands trying to act it out as he was explaining it to you, Woody.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone myself who coughs rebounds up even when they go in this glove, I the idea of not, because my hands suck, the idea of being able to smother pucks without using them, it definitely appeals to me.
Denver University, what a great pipeline to the National Hockey League, and we're looking forward to see what the next steps are for Matt Davis. The Tendy Fest is coming up, the annual event. It's back and rolling, and we're looking forward to that. As In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, and Source for Sports Surrey.
Less than a month away, boys. Hard to believe, actually, that we're less than a month away from June 15th, the 6th Tendy Fest. It's going to be at Fleetwood Arena in Surrey, not too far away from the Hockey Shop new location in Langley. It's going to start at 1 p.m. I believe they have 3 full sheets of ice going. They're going to have all the major brands there. We've already talked about the skate sharpening. You can actually test different custom profiles or radiuses on your blades on the ice. See if you like some of the different custom options, because that's a tough one, right? Like, you test new gear, but how do you test different skates? Because you don't want to have them out there in a game and all of a sudden you suck because you can't, you don't feel like you're getting into your stance properly because you're on your heels or on your toes or whatever, toe picking like I would. Just every opportunity to try the latest and greatest and try some different things on your skate blades. There'll be prizes. There'll be everything. It's just chance to meet Hutch. He's going to be there. I might tag along. Maybe we'll bring a special guest or two, some censoring ahead. There's so much going on. Make sure you don't miss. And the Tendy Fest 6 at Fleetwood Arena. Our SVP, check out their socials, all the Hockey Shop Goal, THS Goal on Instagram, on X, on Facebook. There is an RSVP, so you can sign up to sort of get specific times, or so they make sure they know you're coming. Make sure you check that out as well.
The RSVP works out perfectly into our RM3. Let's slide over to the gear segment right now, and then we'll come out with some news from the National Hockey League and what the Edmonton Oilers have done in flip-flopping goaltenders and how surprised we are. But the gear segment presented by the Hockey Shop, dealing with the new Warrior twig.
Yeah, and we've seen sort of some different iterations and some evolutions from Warrior sticks over the last couple of years. This is a bit of a blend, some new coming into a different line. And I'll be honest with you, there are all the different names and, M1, 2, 3, ritual, this, that. I get a little confused. So let's just go to Cam and he'll break it all down for us. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports. We're over here in Goalie Utopia, where it's always a little dangerous when we're waving around the new twigs, but we've got the new
so shiny
Warrior RM3.
Yeah.
Now, Cam, I'm going to need you, we're going to do this quick.
Okay.
But, because I feel like I've seen this before. But there are differences. Now, Warriors, so many different sort of models and iterations, and some have the new shaft geometry and some don't. 2024 stick lines. What's new, what's different, where are they going, and why?
We have some consolidation to help alleviate some of the issues.
Oh, thank you, because I is easily confused.
Yes. So, starting off, these have a wonderful chromed out look, which is fantastic. I really, really like it.
Oh, they're like pimp my stick.
Weight-wise, extremely lightweight. Flex profile-wise, so the M3 versus the V3, low, mid, kick point. Very flexible.
Sorry, low,
Shooter
mid,
stick.
kick point. Okay. And in the paddle.
That's correct. So you can see on the back, you can see how there's that carve out.
Yeah, you got it's thinned out there.
Exactly.
For our friends at home, maybe.
See, somebody's already calling to know about it more already. This is good. We like these things. So what's now changed? And which is huge for Warrior.
Huge.
Let's talk about sizing.
No.
So if you look on your stick right here, see how it says 25 inch?
No.
This is now a true 25-inch goal stick.
I don't have to do math to figure out which stick to buy. Warrior, you are finally on it.
So you will see the elimination of the 27.5 sizing. That is now the 26-inch stick. 25. 24 becomes an intermediate stick, which was the old 25-inch. So make sure you call us to double check, line up, make sure you find exactly where you're at for sizing.
Because especially seeing how you have old inventory of the old size.
There is going to be some blending.
This is a good move long term. Love it, Warrior. Great job. In the meantime, folks, you have to be really careful when you place your orders.
Yes. But this is great. This is good. You can now line it up with other things on the wall. We can create a little bit more consistency in terms of for shopping. So
okay, what else has changed?
Back to the stick.
This is the new standard.
The new shaft geometry that we saw on their eye sticks. So M2i was the first one.
See, this is why I was confused.
Then we saw the V3i, and now standard on the M3 sticks. You will see that new shaft geometry. So asymmetrical shaft, able to slot your glove in when you're going actually to play the puck, so you can get a little bit more torque. That tapered all the way up into the top feel.
Still enough butt end to give Cam a black eye.
Added durability feature too as well, with this being rounded on all sides here, not a flat edge. There's a nice chance in terms of for the puck to hit it. You have more of a
we all
deflection
know the square edges are where they tend to break on those shaft shots.
Correct.
We all like our flagpole saves too. Pretend they're on purpose, folks. That's the best way to do it.
Flagpole saves, coined a term right here. I think flagpole save. I've never called it flagpole save. Like shaved off the shaft.
Cam, you don't make saves. I got that one from Mike McKenna, who played in the National Hockey League.
So we can give Mike McKenna the credit for coming up with the flagpole save.
Yeah. Just because you've never heard of it doesn't mean
that's fine, because I do it all the time. So we're back. Slide grip. That's the overall feel of that nice textured feel right at the actual paddle meat itself. Great overall shiny look. Extremely lightweight stick. Definitely worth a check out.
I'm checking it out. It's hot. Can I ask you one question? Have they softened the edges around the top of the paddle a little bit too?
Just in terms of where you're saying rounded, so it feels a little bit more comfortable in hand?
Yeah.
Warrior always a step in the sticks.
Because the other ones, there was a real sort of squared, almost sharp, didn't love it, had to put tape over it edge. This feels much better in my hand than previous generation.
You have it here, folks. Kevin will be approved.
I pay attention.
He does.
It's a nice looking twig. All right.
Quick other note, standard twist curve available in these guys. So this matching up with your P31. Nice overall chance for that shot. RTL being their top end stick. Pro being now that mid-level. Well, mid-upper pro, we'll call it.
If you have any questions, this is the guy.
Give me a call. 604-589-8299, 1-800-567-7790. Check it out, thehockeyshop.com. We still have leftover models from last year. Check out our sale inventory. We have lots. And yeah.
That's it.
Let's do it. Where are we going now?
Okay, does he just say the phone number because you make him say the phone number? Because I don't know anybody that could write down the phone number as fast as he says it.
No, but what's really funny is that if you went way back to when these segments began, Cam had to look it up almost every time Woody asked him to say it.
Yeah.
So we got to give Cam credit. It's only taken 3 or 4 years, but he has now memorized his phone number.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great chance to remind folks that if that was a little too fast for you on the podcast, that's why you should be checking out the gear segment on Instagram, on YouTube, because Hutch always puts the number, flashes it up there for longer than Cam says it. So if you ever need to get a hold of him, you can check it out there, check out the numbers there. Like I said, whether it's Cam or one of his staff, like that's the place to go if you've got any questions. I know we've had a bunch of questions. Remember last week, guys, we did the CCM knee protection. And the new CCM Pro and the new CCM the Axis line, and people have sort of commented that, hey, it's not on the website, I can't buy it. Phone them. It's in stock. It's for sale. It's just not allowed to be listed on the website yet. They have it. It's there. They'll sell it to you. Just give them a call.
That's funny. I thought it was just me. I thought I was doing something wrong because I went to look it up because I wanted to see the new, just the physical structure of it, and I wasn't able to see it. And I thought it was just me being me.
I guess there are rules about when things can be online and when they can just be for sale in store. It makes zero sense to me, but they got to follow them. So if you'd like those knee pads, I mean, it's a good sign for us because a lot of people are asking. That means a lot of people went and looked. And to those people, we apologize that we went and put you on a search for nothing, but just call them and they will take care of you.
Hutch coming up with the Stop It Goaltending You, the app, parent segment. How do you motivate your child? Get into that in just a little bit. From motivating to just managing the expectations of your athlete. The Edmonton Oilers went through that this week, and I called it the nuclear option in putting Stuart Skinner into a backup role for a couple of games for Calvin Pickard. Just initially, how surprised were you guys that they did that and now have subsequently come back to Stuart Skinner?
Well, it worked out for us because we had Cal Pickard on the podcast.
Didn't it?
And I was talking on Vegas radio, by the way. I was singing your praise saying, go over to In Goal Radio, the podcast, because
thank you,
Kevin Woodley has the Edmonton Oilers starting goaltender.
When they came back for Game 5, I went over to the locker room. I said to him, "That's got to be the biggest in-goal bump we've ever had."
Absolutely.
So listen, playoffs hadn't gone well for Stu. You've heard me talk about what he is as a goaltender. He's proven he's a number one for them all year. I think we forget. Like, that's a lot to ask. Second-year NHLer. Here's a team with a cup or bust mandate. You're the starter. There were some moments within the games early against Vancouver, and I've been around this Oilers team for a little bit where, frankly, I think they think it was, or thought it was going to be too easy. They didn't bring their best, and their goalie didn't bail them out. Like he'll tell you that, right? There were some, I would argue giving 40 goal scorer Brock Besser time and space in the slot twice in Game 3 probably isn't a great way to handle your defensive duties. Time to pick a spot, but hey, goalie's got to make some of those saves too, and Stu will be the first one to say that. I think what we saw there, and it's interesting because he's not the only one. A bit of a reset. And for him, it was more mental. We've seen other guys physical. We talk about the Carolina Hurricanes giving Freddie Anderson some time off, right, during a series. Like, the game's never been harder mentally or physically. And so I applaud the Oilers for having the bravery to switch, but then also go back and say, hey, we've given him the time. We feel like he's hit that reset button and he's going to be good for us. And listen, the Canucks didn't test him much in Game 6, but there were a couple of saves in there, a couple of key moments, especially in the 5-on-3. Hughes had an absolutely labeled top blocker corner shot with a layered screen, which is a quality scoring chance. Stu looks around the screen to the left, so on his glove side, and as the shot's released, has to come cross body on the screen and get a blocker up at high on the glove. Like, that's a tough save. And so there were moments like that were difference makers in the game. So good for him. Kudos to the Oilers for having the bravery. I don't think a lot of coaches would have had the courage to switch and switch back. So good on them for recognizing, like, they could have just gone with the narrative. Oh, he's our guy. We'll keep going with him. And then when the other guy played well, because listen, Cal gave them 2 really good games. You could argue the best goaltending performance of the series was Cal Pickard in Game 5, and they lost, and they go back to Stu. So I just think it's nice that you're probably talking a lot to your goalie coach, Dustin Schwartz, and trying to have an understanding of where each of his guys are at and trust them to deliver in those moments, and they have.
How about a strong mindset on Skinner, though? Because there was a lot of pressure they put him under last night. And he came out and said he wanted the net, and I'm sure he did want the net and felt confident. But if you weren't quite so strong, you could look at that as, geez, he maybe didn't do as well as he expected. They lost, so they had to switch somebody else in. Now they've put him back in with the series on the line. If he lost last night, where does that stand him for the future with the team, for the future anywhere? How's he feeling mentally about that? I mean, there was a lot at stake for Stuart Skinner last night, and he came through.
And even within the game, like, they go up 1-0 early, and then they give it back, and it's not on him. Like, the defending on that play, Pettersson down below the goal line to Höglander in the slot to allow him to find that seam. Both players, and both teams were guilty of some pretty poor defending, like the Canucks too last night. But Höglander gets first save. Stewie makes the first save, and he's wide open to get the rebound because there's nobody within a couple feet of him. And so all of a sudden it's 1-1, and there could have been a lot of doubts, even though it's not on you necessarily. There could have been a lot of doubts creeping in that moment as well. So the one thing I've never worried about with Stuart Skinner is the mental strength component. He just always sort of has this growth mindset. And so it's, good on him. And we'll see what happens in game 7. But regardless, that was an important bounce back in game 6.
Oilers won 2 of 3 after the change to Calvin Pickard. So it's worked so far. They still have to complete it, but there's a message there. And I wonder, did the rope on starting goaltenders in hockey get shorter because Edmonton Oilers went to this drastic measure?
I think that it depends on what your starting goaltender, who he is and how long he's been at it, right?
But overall, as a league, that gap between starter and backup has got shrunk, right?
But this,
it's just
this
another piece
wasn't
in the
considered
puzzle.
to be a possibility. With all due respect to Pickard,
Sure.
And it was a great story. Nobody was cheering for him harder than me. This was one of those, whether you want to call it the Vasilevsky, the Hellebuck, the Demko, where if you're healthy, you're staying in no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you have to read the situation, and the situation, it made sense in this case, right? Are you doing that to Vasilevsky? No. Are you doing that to Igor Shesterkin? Because you saw the wheels not come off against Carolina, but they certainly started to wobble. And again, and I think you can make the case with Freddie Anderson too. I think Carolina waited a little too late in the playoffs to get him a rest. That they could have done that sooner, because once he got it, he came back strong again. But if you'd done it sooner, would you have gotten him stronger for longer? Shesterkin is in the conference finals. As the games piled up and the stance widened, which is what happens when he gets a little fatigued, the goals started to go in. But you're not putting Jonathan Quick in there. I wonder with the they were up 3-0 in that series. If they'd done it at some point with Quick, if they would have gotten Shesterkin back to how he played at the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody's going to do that. I think it does depend on the situation. There are certain guys that are just staying in there regardless. Jeremy Swayman was staying in there regardless. He was fantastic for the Boston Bruins in that series. Even with Linus Ullmark, a Vezina Trophy winner who had posted exceptional numbers again this season, sitting on the bench.
I was doing some research for the Chirp podcast and was talking to a National Hockey League head coach on the Eastern side. So not familiar as we are with Edmonton. And he just said, given what happened last year, he was encouraged that they made the change in the sense of he supported it, but it was still a bold move. It just felt that after last year, you kind of had to shake something up, and he wasn't sure whether Skinner would get back in, but he liked the move.
And I think the fact you were willing to put him back in was part of what makes it. You didn't just yank him. You yank him and said, okay, let's get a reset here. I watched him do some work with Dustin Schwartz the morning of game 4 here in Vancouver. They went out there and they worked hard on his game. As a matter of fact, actually at one point, I thought he might have gotten injured. He was down for a little while. And hey, you're going to get back in here. You got the opportunity. Make sure you're ready. And he was. Yeah,
if the Oilers are going to go deep, they were going to need him again. And that's the reality of it. Awesome stuff from Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard being able to go in and just give, whether you want to phrase it, Skinner the time or just give Edmonton the opportunity to stay in the series. Awesome stuff there. And a great story coming out of Arizona. Maybe the final note on the Arizona Coyote franchise for now in Connor Ingram winning the Masterton Trophy.
Yeah, well deserved. And there were other good choices. Obviously, there always are when you talk about the Masterton and perseverance and dedication. I mean, Freddie Anderson, who we just talked about, came back after missing all that time with blood clots and was a star for the Carolina Hurricanes down the stretch. But what I love about Ingram's story is his willingness to tell it. He's not a guy that likes the spotlight. We've had him on the podcast here before, but he's not necessarily a guy that likes that focus, that attention, that spotlight. And so his willingness to go into and talk about his battle with OCD and where he was at and how much he needed to get that help and how it's allowed him to get to this level as a goaltender, which is, a legit number 1 in the National Hockey League, has been for a year and a half now. Especially given his reluctance for the spotlight in other situations like that requires a level of bravery. And I think because it benefits other people to see that these, professional athletes who can be viewed as superhuman are in fact human and go through some of the same struggles that a lot of other people do, and that it's okay to reach out for help. To me, that's just one more feather in his cap for what he's been able to do, and well deserved that he gets the Masterton as part of that.
Connor Ingram, the Masterton Trophy winner, and now he gets to Connor Ingram, the Masterton Trophy winner, and now he gets to embark on a new chapter of his career in Salt Lake City with the Utah Hockey Club. By the way, do you guys have a favorite of all the nicknames that have been tossed out?
That's it right there.
Yeah,
I'd love them to keep it at Hockey Club. I think it sounds classy. I don't know. I just like it. Yeah, it's less artificial. It's and just kind of
it's cool. Old school. It's old school.
Old school in the soccer
their barn's
sense,
outdated, so their name might as well be too.
I don't mind it too.
I'm going Yetis.
Oh yeah, I don't know whether Yetis has too much of a tie or crossover with Colorado with the big foot on the shoulder.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, maybe. But listen. I'm with Hutch. I'm with you. I like old school. Right, we're all old here,
and you can still have a nickname attached to it. Soccer teams or football clubs, they have soccer club or football club, and they still have the Bournemouth. AFC Bournemouth in the Premiership, they're called the Cherries, but the Cherries aren't connected to the actual name. So you can still have that nickname somewhere.
I just see, I'm with you guys. Like that works for me too. But I just see the home run that is the Vegas Golden Knights as a new franchise, and the marketing and the shield and the helmet and all the pregame show. I see how the Kraken have embraced, and I love the logo, the S with the glowing red eye, and the fans, Rockets red glare when the anthem comes on, how they punch that for the eye and it lights up in the arena, and they've got the tentacle. I just think that this is an entertainment business, and as much as old school works, I think you got to entertain, and in a new market. Hey, let's be honest with you. It ain't going to be Hockey Club because the merch isn't going to sell. They need to move merch, and that means getting a name that's infectious with young kids, and everybody wants to wear the jersey, so there'll be bright colors in Vegas, Seattle. I don't know. We'll see. Trust that they'll do a good job with it.
I think you're underselling what the marketing people could do, because there's a chance to make it all about everybody being part of that club and bringing the whole community together. So we'll see.
Well,
I expect we are too old, and it won't be that. They are going to want something flashy, but I still think there's a cool opportunity there if they chose to embrace it.
Well, I've covered the Vancouver Canucks for 24 years, so it's inherent that I underestimate a marketing staff.
Here's the thing. They're going to get a good look at the Utah Hockey Club. And if it hits and it goes, they have the option to stay with it. And if it doesn't, they can tweak it and add a nickname, or they can do a full reboot in year number 2. So they've actually positioned this pretty well.
Well, listen, if they're going to go Utah Hockey Club, they got Connor Ingram, who's a Bauer guy, and they got Carl Vamelka, who's a Bryans guy. I need to see some vintage retro sets big time on both of them. And both those companies are capable of knocking it out of the park with that type of design. So, hey, listen, if it takes Hockey Club for us to get more vintage retro sets in the NHL, I'm all for it.
I do think the tie-in with Yeti and the Avalanche a little too close in Denver. They've got some good things going right now. A nice run by the Avalanche and another championship season out of DU. Matt Davis, the starting goaltender there. He will join us for the NHL Century feature interview in just a little bit as the two-time NCAA champion goaltender, first time as a starter, and boy, was he spectacular. But first up, the Stop It Goaltending You, the app parent segment with Hutch, who is motivating us or helping us with the motivation factor.
Well, before Hutch gets to explaining how to motivate your kid, I actually think I have a tool that will help them a little bit. Because one of the things about motivating kids is getting them to sort of watch hockey. We hear that from a lot of goalie coaches. Watch hockey, sort of embrace the game. And between the two products you now get when you sign up for the Stop It Goaltending You app, and that, of course, is the app itself, but also now a free subscription to In Goal Magazine, our premium product. You will have access to the type of tools and videos and things that will entertain your young goalie while also educating them. And it doesn't have to be an all-day, 5-hour grind like it's a job for them. The Stop It Goaltending U app, they have every day of the week, 5 1-minute primers. Just spend 1 minute on there, and then once a week, they have a 120-minute full video. Over at ingoalmag.com, we have, with that InGoal Premium subscription, we have pro reads every week where you basically sit down like you're in a video session with an NHL goaltending coach or an NHL goaltender. Between the two of those, you will become unstoppable, and you don't have to grind 8-10 hours. Like, it's not a job. Just spend a few minutes a day on both of those products, especially the Stop It Goaltending U app. You will become a better goaltender. You will learn to enjoy the position more, and you will get better as a result.
Hutch, give me some help. I'm trying to get my child to be more active, more involved. How do I go there?
Well, every kid's different, so I'm just going to give you some ideas that have come from my experience. It is as a parent, but it's also 20 years as a teacher and a coach. So I've dealt with a whole lot of kids over the years in different sports. And so I've got a few ideas. Before that, I do just want to mention one thing related to the parent segment. Our good friend, Pete Fry, the goalie mindset guy, is going to be coming on the show next week as part of our parent segment. So if anybody out there has any questions around mindset, mental training, and so on for goaltenders, let us know, parents@ingoalmag.com. And we are going to pick a couple of questions out and share them with Pete. One of the reasons we're bringing Pete on is just to celebrate the fact that in July 20th, in fact, in Vancouver, we're going to be hosting a full day seminar with Pete that will be available both in person and online. We'll have lots more information available at InGoal about that in the future. But Pete's also a great guy. I actually thought about asking Pete the question for today's segment, boys, because I'm sure he'd have some great things to say. But I thought I'd share mine. Maybe it'll come up again next week. I think this question has been coming up a lot in the last couple of weeks, guys. And maybe it's just because it's summer, it's less structured for hockey. And when kids don't have practices to go to, I think people look around and they wonder why their kids aren't working harder. And there's a whole lot of reasons, but I think, and I've been there too, 100% I've been there, guys. It's sort of a grade A FOMO situation. It's a real fear that maybe my kid's sitting down watching TV, playing a video game, doing something like that, and not training. And you're imagining all those other kids their age out there working hard. The question comes from parents of kids who are as young as 6 or 7, honestly, right up to, I've had that question from a parent of a kid who's playing U18 and wants to be in the NHL and doesn't really do anything beyond practice or even in practice. So it comes at all different levels. Like I said, every kid is different. I can't promise that what I'm going to share today, guys, will make your kid the next Crosby or McKinnon in terms of work ethic, but I do have a few thoughts. What I often hear in response to it is people saying, well, it's got to come from within. Just let the kid be themselves and they need to learn to work hard on their own, as if it's somehow built into our DNA. I don't know, maybe it is to an extent, guys, but there has to be more to it because we teach our kids just about everything that they know. And you also can't be the taskmaster just standing over your kid with things for them to do all the time, because that's not what the game is about. It's not going to teach them to have fun. It's nothing I would ever endorse. But like I said, lots of experience. So I've got a few thoughts. One of the ones that I've said many times to both of you on the show, guys, is that kids want to please. They want to be spending time with you. So the first one I'm going to say, and this relates back to Sensorina, set the example. It's no surprise that if you love golf, your kid's probably going to love golf. If you love fishing, you're probably going to raise a kid who loves fishing. Pick any other passion that you have. Your kids are probably going to give it a go and probably grow up with similar interests to you. I know you've got lots to do in your life, mom and dad. I know you got long days at work. You've got family to look after, far more obligations than your kids do. But if we come home after work and we sit and just watch TV, what do we think our kids are going to do when they're not at practice? If the only exercise example you're setting is sending them to practice, having them do what they're told to by their coach, and then they come home and nothing else is being done by you at home, where do you think they're suddenly going to get motivated to be an athlete? So I'm not saying you have to go and train like a goalie, although if you want to put Sensorina on and play with your kid, I'm pretty sure they'll have a good time challenging you and doing the different drills with you and so on. But something that shows your kids that you really believe in working hard and training physically, I think is a really good example. I don't think I've told this story to either one of you before, guys, but my mother was not an athlete. My father was not an athlete. I remember at 6 years old, standing in the kitchen with my mother, and we're partner juggling oranges just to try something athletic. And she loved the fact that we were trying it too. She didn't care if I dropped them on the floor and they got all squished and so on. It was just about doing something together. She'd bounce a ball for me to catch as a kid, as a young goalie, just anything to get involved in what I was doing, even though none of this was her kind of a thing. So you don't have to be training. You can just get involved in your kids' training. And my mom didn't have Sense Arena in 1972, but I guarantee she would have given it a go if we did have it, guys. But there's other ways beyond your own training that you can set an example. And here's a couple of thoughts. Do you only get excited about the big highlights when you're watching a hockey game on TV? Do you just call your kid in and say, look, Igor Shesterkin just made this unbelievable save? That's going to stoke their dreams, and that's really cool. But what about encouraging what it takes to get there and be Shesterkin? I like to get excited about other things that the kids are doing. So you've heard me talking about catching athletes being good and then making, like maybe making a good decision in a game. I'll talk to my goalies about having made a great decision to hold their edges in a particular play. We'll celebrate that. It's not just about the save. It's about how they made that save that we're going to celebrate. About skating to another position instead of sliding. About making a desperation save and holding their balance so that they're there for the next save as well. Mom and dad, you can do that too. You can pick out those things that are part of the process and celebrate them. And it also applies to hard work. Look, it's not as easy to find, but you can do it. We used to travel to practices one year where it took almost an hour each way to get to practice, a couple times a week. We'd put on an audiobook. Maybe you listen to the podcast. We would listen to an audiobook, for example, about Kobe Bryant, who is one of the legendary hard workers out there. We would celebrate how hard he worked. And this isn't about programming your kid. I was just sharing something about an athlete that I genuinely admired. And guess what? My kid does now too. Or I'll send along a clip I see on Instagram or Twitter or whatever of some athlete who just busts his butt and works really hard. It's about celebrating the process. But speaking of Stuart Skinner, I was at the Eli Wilson Goaltending School in Toronto, guys. Stuart Skinner was a student there at age 16. And I got one of my favorite photos I've ever taken. It was at the end of an ice session. All the goalies are filing off the ice. They'd been out there almost 2 hours. They had another 2-hour ice session to come that day. And these are all the guys and girls that have the aspirations to play at the highest level of the game. And they're filing off the ice. The Zamboni is coming along. And there's Stuart Skinner at the side of the boards doing crease movement drills on his own. I grabbed that photo. I sent it home via text as quick as I could. Not with the message, here's what you have to do if you want to be good. That just brings up guilt and stress in your kids. But it was just celebrating something that I thought was really impressive. And I just said, look how cool this is. And Stuart, I think, was about 16 years old at the time. Celebrating hard work, celebrating the process. We always talk about focusing on the process and not just the results. And I think we can do that as parents and celebrate that. Now, not everybody has those experiences, guys. You can't all be on the ice with Stuart Skinner or at an NHL practice like Woody gets to be to pull out some cool things, or you get to be Darren. But you still can focus on what your kids are doing well and working hard and just give them a little nudge. So was there a drill on the ice and your kid beat another kid in, say, a skating drill, those awful skating drills at the end of practice, and your kid happened to dig deep and beat one of the players? Celebrate it afterwards. Even if they were last, were they a little closer to their partner than they were last week? Celebrate that when they come off the ice. Tell them that you just loved what you saw about how hard they work. And when they come out after practice, give them a high five and say, man, it was so clear that you were just busting your butt today. I promise they're going to want to do that more next time. Focus on the process, not what they need to be doing results-wise. So those are just some examples of catching kids being good, of doing the things that you want them to do, but also focus on the fact, guys, that it takes a long time. It takes years. Kids are going to want to please you. They're going to want to do the best. They're going to want to work hard, but it's going to take time, and be patient. Your 7-year-old is not going to grind like Nathan McKinnon does. But if you pick on a few of these things, I think over time, 10 years later, you might find that your kid is being described by other people as a self-motivated athlete who loves to push himself. So just a few thoughts, a few things I've been through, both with goalies that I know, with athletes that I've coached, students I've taught, and I hope a couple of them maybe resonate with people, guys.
And just like that, Little Hutch comes walking into the room. perfect timing on that behind.
And we're going to celebrate the fact that he's come into the room to get me another coffee. What an awesome kid getting his dad.
Thumbs up, no arguing, nothing.
He
Beautiful.
offered. He texted halfway through the show, I'm making coffee. Do you want one? Love it.
And motivating your child to do more doesn't involve like walking by as they are on their phone or their TV and say, let's get up and do something. It takes some planning, it takes some effort, it takes some organization on your part too.
Yeah, it takes, but I think it's just about building some of that stuff into your life and into your routine. So maybe your kid doesn't have an off-ice training routine, but maybe you've been on In Goal and you've seen a few things. Hey, Johnny, let's try this together. I'd love to work on this balance exercise. I'd like to learn how to juggle. Whatever it might be, you can do it with them, or just show them that you're working towards a goal. Like maybe you are not a runner, but you've decided you want to take on your first 5K. Make it real obvious that it's okay that you're walking first before you're running, but you're working hard and you're having fun. Just share something with them.
Why does Johnny get a bad rap?
I know, little Johnny, hey?
Yeah.
It's tough. Little Johnny's a hardworking kid at the end of the day. I love him.
Poor little Johnny. Listen, the Stu Skinner story reminded me of one of my own. Program of Excellence camp, Hockey Canada. I was there as a video coach, and it was actually the camp where Stuart Skinner met Dustin Schwartz, which I think played a strong role in the Oilers drafting him later that summer. And after one of the sessions, one of the main goalie coaches introduced me to the group and said, hey, if you've ever got any questions about things like equipment or whatever, this guy knows his stuff. He can probably help you. And I was like, I don't know. I thought he was just pumping my tires because I'm basically just in the background there. I'm not really doing much, doing video. Stuart Skinner was the only one that sought me out later to ask questions, introduce himself, and have a discussion about gear adjustment stuff that might be able to help his game. And listen, we've been there. We see that. I see guys in the NHL that are wearing equipment that's in a way that's prohibiting their game. But nobody asks those questions. He's always had this growth mindset and this desire to sort of always be looking for opportunities to expand himself and get better. And so whether that's work ethic or asking questions, I love that about the kid. And that's why I don't think it's a coincidence that despite getting those 2 games off in this series, he came back and looked like himself in Game 6 facing elimination.
You could be a gear coach. We might see that at some point.
He could. Woody could get a job at the hockey shop.
I could. Then I'd have to put up with Cam all the time.
I think Cam would have to put up with you. Let's be honest.
That's a fair assessment.
I'm pretty sure only one of you is getting through the first week anyway. So it's 50-50 who's going to have to put up with who.
And he'd be the boss, so I'd be out of my head.
Would he be stocking shelves at midnight?
We got our NHL Sense Arena feature interview this week, connecting with Matt Davis from DU, NCAA Championship, DU winning their 10th NCAA title. And this has been a one that we've been looking forward to bringing to you, and an area where it just is a goaltender, an athlete, a person that is so gracious and open to the discussion. Woody.
Yeah, no, it was a fun one. We got into all kinds of different things. We talked obviously about the moment and the stage and the spotlight and how he handled all those things from a mental standpoint. We talked technique. We got into pretty much, ironically, gear was the one thing we didn't really get to, but we got to pretty much everything else. So one of those ones where this may not be a goaltender that everyone is familiar with yet. Wasn't drafted. He'll be probably at some development camps this summer with NHL teams. He certainly opened some eyes with this performance. And sometimes when not every week is it, a guy who's been in the NHL for 10 years or 12 years, like Calvin Pickard last week. But man, sometimes the takeaways from these guys are even more valuable. And that was the case with Matt Davis. He shared so many great insights. This really is a can't miss interview, thanks to his openness and generosity with his time. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this one. So let's have at her.
It's the NHL Sense Arena feature interview on In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com.
Really excited to welcome to the In Goal Radio podcast, first-time guest, hopefully first of many, and a guy we're a little belated, taking me a little while to get to this, Matt Davis, NCAA champ, 2-time NCAA national champion with the University of Denver. The star of the show in this most recent one. I guess first off, just the emotions that come with an evening like that, a win like that on that stage, and how you've come down from that high since.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a whirlwind. You got a lot of emotions. I was had my family there, so it was incredible. I mean, to bring the 10th national championship to a program like the University of Denver, it's just so special. And I'm not sure if it's really sunk in yet, but we're all done with kind of like the organized celebrations. So I'm sure that'll happen soon.
Now, you're second, obviously, but different when you're playing the starting role. I'm curious, did the experience of going through the first one, even if it wasn't in the same role, did it help you prepare for the spotlight, the attention, all the things that come with a stage that bright and big?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a level of familiarity with the Frozen Four and just the tournament in general. I mean, like you just kind of know what to expect going in, and there's a couple more things for me this year, such as like media and stuff, but that was all easy to manage. And I mean, yeah, it was just, it certainly helped being there before.
Okay. So when you're drawing that up, we all think of championship moments. We all dream of them as kids, whether we're playing road hockey or pond hockey or, pickup games. I think for most of us, they include a goose egg and probably a highlight reel save or two. You got them all. I can't count how many times I've seen the save on Leonard. Walk us through it, because I know I don't even have to tell people about it, but diving backdoor Superman glove save in a tight game, that moment and looking back on it, how it sort of played out and how you saw it.
Yeah, I mean, puck went backdoor, and they were on the power play fairly early in the period, and we knew going into the period they were going to have a push, so we just had to be ready for that. And so the puck went backdoor, ended up going backdoor again, and I was just in my mind, I was like, uh-oh, like I got to get over, and I managed to just dive over, and it's one of those saves where like we as goalies know that it's not one you're going to expect to make every time, and you got to get a little bit lucky. So I was just super fortunate there, and just feel super lucky.
Okay, so you say that, but at the same time, like if you, for example, stay stuck in technique and aren't willing to abandon it and do whatever it takes, you don't get there. I've heard some guys, hey, if a shooter's got a wide open cage, he's probably shooting in the middle of it. So rule of thumb, get something in the middle. Do any of those, is it just all instincts at that point? Or are there any things that sort of from your past or experiences that, in desperation moments, yes, it's a desperation save, but there are things that go into it?
No, yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's, I was more so saying like in practice, like you're going to make that maybe 9, or that's going to go in maybe 9 times out of 10. And that's certainly a thing. I mean, you don't practice it, but you learn more with experience with those kind of saves. And yeah, I mean, good players are typically going to get that up, and you just really try to dive over and get your hand over the puck as much as possible and just try to take away as much net as possible. So there certainly is some technique, and there's definitely like some level of skill involved there. But yeah, I mean, there's still that fortunate factor. So
yeah, no, and so early eyes too, I guess, are another key. Like it's not a blind dive; you're probably getting eyes on stick blade and get an idea.
Oh yeah. I mean, everything comes down to early eyes.
Okay, so walk me through, like for those people that maybe didn't, outside of the save, didn't get to see a lot of your game throughout the season or throughout the playoff run. Walk me through sort of how you would describe your game and where that blend of the technical components and that willingness and ability to go outside the box when you need to. Where does that come from, and how's it evolved over the years?
I'd say that I've really tried to become a super calm and collected goalie in there. I mean, I think in juniors I was pretty erratic, and I would always be in the splits and on my stomach, just like trying to make desperation saves more so. And with me and my goalie coach here, Ryan Massa, we really just focused on narrowing my feet and making every save repeatable. So that was just an area that really, really helped. And that and rebound control was another thing we focused on big time this year. So just trying to kill every play, no matter what. And if you're screened and you can't see it and it hits you in the stomach, you still gotta kill it. So we worked on stuff like that a lot. And one other aspect of my game is my puck handling ability. I think I'm a goalie that loves to get out there and handle pucks, and I'm pretty confident with it. So I'm not afraid to really try some stuff. And yeah, I mean, I developed that throughout my life. I mean, I feel like my game here throughout 2 years of watching my goalie partner, Magnus Corona, like it really grew. I got bigger, stronger, and faster. And we were just able to really narrow in on so many details that ended up mattering big time down the stretch.
So the narrowing of the stance, that is a common theme we've heard from guys over the last couple of years, you know, at every level, right up to the National Hockey League, guys who have been in the league for a long time. As it becomes increasingly east-west, the importance of sort of keeping your feet under you so you can beat those plays up and have that patience you talked about. When you said you were a desperation, maybe more often and earlier than you'd like in junior, is that a function sometimes of being a little wider in your stance, sort of going into save execution a little prematurely?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I found that when I was wide, I mean, now I can see it like clearly. I was wide, I would get stuck, my weight would get back, and then any kind of backdoor save, I had no option but to slide into the splits or dive. So it was something that I really had to learn. And I mean, guys can really one-time pucks here, like stuff happens quickly. So if you're not there and set and on your feet as much as possible, then you're it's not going to look good. It's not going to be pretty.
Any advice for other young goalies? Because there's probably a lot of goalies that are hearing this, that have heard it a lot on our podcast a lot. We've, you know, like I said, up to every level, guys talking about narrowing feet and sort of changing their setup and their stance. And sometimes we assume it's easy. Oh, look at these guys do it. But I know how hard it is, especially, you know, like the narrower you are, the taller you are, the further you are away from the ice. So it's hard to maintain that patience. Any advice or tips on how you went through that process to get comfortable playing from a narrower stance?
I mean, I think you find kind of a pocket there. Like it's an incredibly difficult thing to do because, you know, like, I mean, everyone knows how it is. You try to turn off your brain and make saves, especially in games. And I was fortunate enough to have 2 years of just practice time to do it. And it was kind of like I'd go to one extreme and then I'd be like, okay, I gotta widen it a little bit here. Like it's too narrow.
You're looking like Nabokov in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, you got to be okay with getting scored on in practice sometimes when you're trying to do that. Like, because I mean, you're not going to stop every puck, and when you're trying to make those kind of changes, like it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to get scored on. But it's going to save you in games in the long run, and it's a cognitive change that you really have to focus on so that it becomes subconscious.
Any drills you liked or things you went through with Ryan? And I guess it's important to have the support of a good goalie coach like Ryan, because he's got to let the coaching staff know that, hey, there might be a few more pucks going in for the next little while, but it's part of us coming out on the other side with a better goalie. Yeah.
I mean, no real drills come to mind that we did to narrow it. It was more so just like he's there every day, and it was more so just kind of watching. And he's like, if he saw me get scored on, he'd just like yell at me, narrow your feet. And I was like, yeah, I should do that. And so it just started becoming habit. And if I would get scored on, like it became something where I was like, oh, my feet were way too wide there. And I could tell because I was off balance. I was more in my heels. I wasn't able to get my knee snap back under me in my slide, or I went to the splits. And you start to just see those kind of clear clues that you were too wide. And it's tough, but I mean, it helps so much.
Speaking of Ryan, you know, I saw some of the praise you had him for the work because you missed some time. Like you go on this incredible playoff run, and I think, you know, we talked about the national championship game and that incredible save, but you know, at the Frozen Four, 3 goals on 145 shots in 3 games. That's incredible. Playoffs. 956 save percentage from start to finish, but you had missed a couple of months earlier in the season. Walk us through again that process of coming back from that, getting back to where you're comfortable with your game, and the importance of your goalie coach and helping you along that way.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, you know, groin injuries as a goalie, it's just kind of like it's like a quarterback with an Achilles injury. Like it's extremely difficult, and that confidence factor is huge. But Massa was huge on just kind of making sure we took it one step at a time, one small step at a time. And a couple weeks before I got back on the ice, and it was a couple weeks before I was actually fully extending and really trying to push it a little bit. And I ended up getting to a spot where it just seemed like it wasn't getting any better. And it was one of those things where you just got to trust in your goalie coach, trust in your strength and conditioning coaches. And I was also fortunate that was going into our Christmas break. So I was able to go home and rehab it a bunch more. And so after taking all those baby steps, I was able to take some time off, and I come back and just kind of got back out there and I wasn't noticing it. So it was a lot of just strengthening my groin and just increasing my confidence level. And yeah, I mean, he was a huge help for me there. And yeah.
When you come off an injury, the importance of a progression back to sort of return to play. Again, we get a lot of parents and kids that listen to this on the way to the rink, on the way to summer camps, things like that. And so we're always looking for lessons, takeaways. And I do think, especially with a groin injury, the tendency can be like, as soon as you feel better, to hop back out there on the ice. What types of progressions did you take to sort of make sure that when you did get back out there, you felt comfortable, you weren't going to risk re-injuring it?
Well, we started out, like, as soon as I started skating, we were just doing C cuts, like from board to board, and it was not fully extending. It was just kind of like little baby C cuts. Like I was a quarter of a depth into my stance, and like you're just not extending it at all. And then we just kind of grew from there as I got more confident in it. And I mean, we got to a point where it was just kind of, it became more T pushes, and it's like little shuffles. Like you go to shuffles, then you start increasing the distance. And then once you're super confident in those long shuffles, then you go to T pushes. And yeah, like it was a long process, that's for sure. And it was short little skates, like 10 minutes, 10, 20 minutes max. And we would just get out there and start testing it and seeing what it's like and how I felt after. And then we go from there.
As much as in the moment, I'm sure you're just like, you wanted everything to be better and get back into playing goal. Is there any benefit to all that skating? Like middle of a season, we talk about edge work and patience and how the games become so lateral. That's a lot of skating work, even though you'd much rather be doing full work. But was there any benefit? Did you feel better on your edges at all?
Well, I would say so. And another benefit I found was when I started practicing again. And It was kind of like I was not fully confident in it yet. So I would just I wouldn't move much. And we found that I was making just as many saves as I would normally make. It was like, and he was like, see, like I've always told you, you don't have to move nearly as much as you do. And I was like, yeah, you're right. If I just control my pucks and it was pretty crazy. It was kind of like a nice little like eureka moment for us coming out of injury. So it was sweet. Okay.
So explain that a little more for us. So just so we get a sense of it, and the kids, because we do hear that a lot from goalies and goalie coaches, and it can be a tough thing to understand that, like, hey, you're in the spot. Don't move out of the way. Move into the puck. These are subtle little small movements. You don't need to make big exaggerated movements all the time. But it can be tough to sort of realize that at times. Did you guys use video when you're looking at that, or was it just that matter of you sort of feeling it while you were going through the rehab process and getting back on the ice?
Well, we would always try to use video, but it never seemed to really click for me. And then as soon as I got out of that, like going into the rehab process, and I got out back on the ice and was practicing, and it was like, if I'm on angle, my hands are in a good spot and I've got good depth, doesn't mean I have to be out in the white paint. Like there's not much net. And if they drag it, it's just a small little of adjustment, even if it's just re-squaring my toes. Like it's like, that's all it is. Like you don't really have to move nearly as much as you do. And I'm by no means a big goalie. So like that was really huge for my game. And it was just it was a little bit mental, where you just got to tell yourself to calm down, because when you get antsy and when you get high emotions, you'll start to busy your feet, busy your game, pucks will hop out of you. So that's just kind of like, it was cool, because I mean, I definitely saw the benefits of that throughout the end of the season. And yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how it works.
So we're definitely not going to recommend that anyone go out and rip up their groin in order to discover the importance of not reaching on pucks. But there's a good lesson there nonetheless. You talked about sort of when you get amped up or when the moment gets big, that's inherently what I think a lot of goaltenders do, right? Try and do too much. It's so easy to say play simple and yet so hard to do. But I'm wondering, because you had all the success when the moment should have been the most nerve-wracking, when the stage was the biggest and the lights were the brightest. I saw that you referenced your work with a sports psychologist. How are there tips or things you can take away from your work there that another goalie might hear and resonate with them in terms of get them to play that quiet game in moments where everything else around you is quite loud?
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing that really helped me the most, I'd say, is just breathing. And you hear it a lot, you hear it all the time, but like I would either do breathing 6 seconds in, a hold, and then exhale for 6 seconds, or I'd do box breathing where it's 4 seconds in, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and then hold for 4. And it was kind of like the secret sauce that we found towards the end of the year. I mean, there was this one game in Duluth, I think it was in February, January, and I had a terrible weekend, like terrible showing. And I got busy. I was focusing on all the details that we worked on, and it just completely busied my game, and it did not go well. And then I sat down with my sports psychologist over FaceTime, and Mass and I chatted a lot, and we came up with this breathing, and it was just, you just have to trust in it. You have to trust in it. And you get to the biggest stage and I don't even feel nervous. I just feel like I'm in like a flow zone. Like it's just kind of go with the flow. Stuff's going to happen. You just let it go. And it was just breathing before the game, during TV timeouts, just whenever I had the chance, sometimes mid play, if the puck went down and I felt my energy kind of get amped up a little bit. And it worked wonders for me. It was incredible.
So are both breathing techniques, both of the ones you described, things you use to bring yourself down a little bit? Because we have seen some athletes that will have different breathing techniques. Sometimes it'll be to sort of get them up, like almost like you would use it if you're waking up after a pregame nap, and other techniques they use to sort of bring things down. Were both of those designed to sort of mellow you in the moment?
Oh yeah. Like there was times where if I was too amped up before a game, I'd just sit down and do that for like 15 minutes or however long it took. And it just got me right back into the zone. And like there was one, like the game that I was probably the most amped up for was Cornell in the second game of the regional. And I let in not the greatest goal pretty early on. And then
hey, it happens to all of us.
After that, I really was just like, hey, like you got to relax here. So I started breathing again. And I mean, the TV timeouts were like 2.5 minutes. So that was super helpful for that. So I just started breathing again and getting back down there. And then the rest of the game, I managed to shut the door. So
Love it.
I think we really found a formula that works. And I mean, it's not going to work the same for everybody, but once you find that, I think you just got to latch onto it.
Were there different things you were feeling that had you alternate between one and the other, or like in terms of the two different, like the box breathing or the 4 on, or sorry, the 6 and 6, did it depend, or were there certain triggers to be, I'm going to do this one now or the other one?
Sometimes it was just kind of whatever I was feeling.
Okay.
And then also the box breathing, it's kind of hard sometimes when your heart rate gets so high, because I think it's something with like your CO2, your ability to handle CO2 or something like that. I'm not too scientific there. So, but yeah, sometimes I just have to switch to the 6 and 6, and then I try to get a couple box press in first or after. So it was just kind of whichever I needed.
Okay. So I should ask this because you're at school. You're obviously not taking biology after that.
Absolutely not.
What's the major? Where's the focus right now? I know the focus, like student athlete, having known a few, it always amazes me that they can handle school at all, the amount of work you guys put in. But what are you looking at?
I'm in finance.
Oh, so wow, there we go. So I'm going to be hitting you up for some advice after you're done your playing career. You talk about the breathing, you talk about the stage. I also saw something, and I just was reading up before we had you on. Use the phrase tire pump. And, we do work with sports psychologists that talk about confidence being something you can create in yourself, not something you should rely on a moment for or the first save for, that you can manufacture it and instill it in yourself. I'm wondering if this is the same thing when you talked about the tire pump. When, if you're okay with it, can you share sort of what you meant by that?
Yeah. So it's just kind of giving yourself compliments. Like, or not, it wasn't really compliments, but it was more so just like, you're the man. Like you're the guy. Like, you're going to do this. And I just remember telling myself, like, I will not be denied. I will not be denied. Like, just right before, especially third periods, when you're going in and you're about to close down games. It's kind of like, I would kind of think of it like that like in baseball, when you got that closing pitcher coming in, his song's coming out, and then everyone's kind of like, all right, this game's over, kind of thing. So I was just kind of like, I was playing around with it, and I found one that worked during the playoffs, and I just started telling myself, I will not be denied. I will not be denied. And then there's also some that we worked in with a couple of my details. It was like, fast eyes, quiet feet. I can't be beat.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So that was one that I would say to myself during games, and it worked. I mean, my Masses, he's a wizard with that kind of thing. He comes up with a bunch of those. He's pretty smart.
Okay, so we have seen guys in the past jot these down. Eric Comrie with the Buffalo Sabres this year had one that he'd put on the inside of his stick. Corey Schneider, Michael DiPietro in the past have shared messages they would have stitched inside the back of their blocker. You know, little reminders within a game, the mantra that sort of gets us into the moment and makes us feel good. Obviously, you had these in your head. Did you ever consider putting them on a piece of gear, little reminders?
I think I would probably get a little bit
distraction.
I don't think it would work as well for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I think just me personally, I think it's better just to have it in my head, because those, I've never had one that's worked for like a couple years. Like, I've had to really shuffle behind them. Like, I remember I used to use this one, and I'll still do it sometimes. It was the Braden Holtby one. It was, I have no future, I have no past, I'm here to make the moment last. So I would use that one a bunch. And I mean, there just comes a time where I find that it just stops working for me, and then I just have to find a new one. So I don't think it would work as well if I put it on my gear.
It would be like it's like changing your stance, right? You work on narrow, and all of a sudden after a few weeks you're like, oh crap, I'm so narrow, I need to widen out, right? Like you can't concentrate on the same thing all the time. Any other little tidbits? Like, I mean, you mentioned Holt's obviously famous for the water bottle, and seen a bunch of guys copy that. Did you have anything else you used to sort of, whether it was a game where the play was at the other end and the clock was maybe losing a little slow, tips, tricks to sort of stay in the moment? We've covered a bunch of them already, so.
Yeah, there's some that I've gotten a bunch from my sports psychologist, Steven Gonzalez, and one was just, I mean, that's another thing. Like, we've just had to shuffle through them, and I've never been able to find like a clear answer when I'm in a rut to get out of it. So we've always just had to work through a new thing, and it's like, oh, did that one work? No, we'll try this one. So like, there's been some like just kind of like the flashlight, like, what's your flashlight on? Is it on the noise and the fans and whatever the other team's saying to you, or is it just on the puck? And so like, there's stuff like that. It's just, where's your focus? Narrow it to the puck. Or even meditation techniques, like, say you're standing out there for the anthem, and it's just kind of like, you just feel your feet, you feel your hands, like, you feel like you hear the music, you see three things, you hear three things. Like, it's just kind of meditation techniques to stay in the moment. And those have been super helpful for me too. And I also utilize those during my visualization. I always try to feel it.
Feel the moment. Are you seeing yourself from sort of bird's eye view when you're visualizing, or are you seeing the play like through your own eyes?
I tend to be more like first person.
Okay.
So I'll just be like when I'm visualizing at home, I'll be in my gear. I'll smell the sweat. I'll smell the ice. I'll feel my hands. I'll visualize plays happening, and I'll feel it hit me. Like, if I'll feel a blocker save hit me right in the middle of the blocker, or a glove save hit me right in the mesh, or like, I'll feel the pants and just feel it stick to me. And I feel like that kind of, it's helped me kind of soften up when it comes to the game time, so that when pucks do hit me, they don't pop out.
I love it. I love that. It's like you got like Sensorina going on without the actual Sensorina. You don't need the virtual reality. You got it going on between the ears.
Oh yeah,
I love it.
That's actually probably one other thing that helped me well, it definitely helped me not be as nervous come the Final Four. I mean, ever since January, I mean, it was Steven Gonzalez and goalie coach Massa and my dad. I mean, we were all talking about just things that I can do to make sure I'm ready, say that time comes. And that visualization piece was a big thing. So I would visualize probably a couple times a week, just being in the Frozen Four, and like whether it's getting to St. Paul or just visualizing the entire kind of experience, visualizing the game. And every time it just ends with the guys coming off the bench storming you.
You made it happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I don't know if I can make that credit, but
that's what the visualize, like, we have some sports psychs that, and a lot of the techniques you talked about, headlight and getting it on the puck. We heard that from John Stevenson and webinars we've done with him. Braden Holtby's longtime sports psychologist and sort of mental coach. Some of the other techniques you use are things we've heard and talked about in the past. And one guy that we work with talks about sort of that moment, like that winning moment, and having a clear picture of that. And it sounds like you did, sort of manifesting that destiny in a way.
Yeah, I think I actually heard about that first when I was in the Stop It goaltending camp, like probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then Corey Schneider spoke at it, and he just kind of talked about like his visualization and how specific it is. And then I get here and Massa talks about the same thing, about how he started just be able to like visualize a score and it would just happen, like basically every time. Like, cause he was quite the goalie himself. He was unreal back in Omaha, and he had a good little pro career. And yeah, but like, it's just crazy how it works. And you just want to be as detailed as possible in your visualizations.
Okay, so you mentioned Stop It. You're from Calgary. I'm going to rewind here a little bit. We've gotten through all these great things that have happened this year and all the work you put in to get there. How did it all start for you? How did Matt Davis become a goaltender?
I think it was just I always knew I wanted to play hockey and be an NHL player, and it was whenever I would dream of it, I was always in net. So I just remember like hearing the thunder of like the pad of a big pad save, or just feeling a sweet glove save or something like that. And always remember my first glove save in the basement of our old house. I was just kind of standing there for my older brother. He just kind of ripping those little road hockey balls, and one of them just happened to stick into my glove. So it's kind of funny how you go back and yeah, it's a pretty special moment.
Okay, so full right. We don't hold it against you. Just kidding. Left-handed, or was that just the way you got started?
Left-handed. Okay. I actually played my first game with we'll say normal gloves.
Okay.
I didn't enjoy it too much, and then
I can imagine.
I got a pair of we lost that game 5-2, I remember, and I was like, I don't really know if I want to do this. And then I got a pair of Southpaw mitts, and I think we won that game pretty handedly. So I was like, maybe I do want to do this. I just need these special gloves.
You weren't going full Vasilevsky on it. He told us that he's actually left-handed and would have preferred and naturally would have caught full right. But growing up in Russia, even with a dad as a professional goalie or professional goalie at the time, couldn't get the gear. That's how he ended up catching, as you said, normal.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is kind of nuts, eh?
Yeah, and it's that actually, like the full right. I mean, as a player, I normally shoot right. So I've been pretty lucky with being left-handed and shooting right. I mean, puck handling kind of just came a little bit more naturally than it does to some other goalies.
Okay, you said that was a big part of your game, the ability to dish and get out there, and obviously not just, passing the puck, but making the right reads and the right sets are a big part of that. I saw you had 3 apples this year. Does anything else change? Like, as you're gifted with the puck, do you have to learn how and when to handle it in certain ways? Or sometimes even the system can change. I didn't see a lot of helpers before, and then all of a sudden 3 apples this year. Was there anything that changed, or was it just opportunity?
I mean, yeah, it was just opportunity. It just, sometimes you make a stretch pass and they've got a good opportunity and it just doesn't go in the net. So that it's stuff like that. And then you also get some phantom apples where you just go stop a puck behind the net and you got a D-man like Zeev Bouillum go end to end and and go score. So yeah, I mean, it's something that it definitely changes as you get older. I mean, in junior, I'll definitely say I was a lot more experimental and a lot more kind of radical with the puck. And now it's more so about just making the right play making sure my D-man doesn't get hit. And I mean, like, don't be afraid to use some flash, like hit the middle sometimes, like when it's open. Teams typically do leave that wide open. You just have to have the confidence to hit it. And don't be afraid to throw some sauce, and also don't be afraid to just stick it in the corner if it's what you need to do. So it's just kind of making that read. And I was happy this year I managed to go all year without, because I mean, when you play it as much as I do, you kind of expect to maybe have one major hiccup every once in a while. And I was happy I didn't have one this year. So knock on wood, hopefully we'll keep that streak going. So
That's the Mike Smith rule, right? Everybody wanted to rip on the mistakes, but the reality was he was out there stopping it so often they were in it's like the elite skilled defenseman, right? That's always skating the puck out of their zone, right? They've got the puck more, they're going to have more mistakes. So that I'm glad to hear that it went perfect. Growing up, who was your guy? And does the southpaw thing play a role? Like, did you have to, like, were you looking at the Vokuns of the world or the Jose Theodores of the world, or did it matter? It was just more about any goalie.
Well, I saw Hiller a lot in Calgary, and
right.
I mean, I was like, oh no way, like he's a southpaw too. But it was hard not to love Carey Price, that's for sure. And yeah, like he was just incredible. It was crazy fun to watch, just constantly.
We talk about narrow stances and narrowing your stance. Was there a point where you started to try and sort of emulate some of those guys as you're watching? Like, at what point does that go from you're just out there playing to maybe some goalie coaching, maybe some technique, and thinking, hey, this is something I could do and win a national championship one day?
Like, just as in watching NHL guys?
Or just in terms of to go from a young kid watching NHL guys to that evolution of something where you're trying to imitate them, and then maybe working with coaches and on the technical aspects and thinking this is something more than just minor hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge to watch a lot of hockey. Like, I think that's a big thing. Just watch as much as you can, and then you get exposed to a lot of goalie coaches too, and you just kind of start to morph your own style. I mean, I think I realize now, like I'm a shorter guy. I can't play exactly like UC Saros. I can't play exactly like Uroš Sturgeon. Like, it's just kind of, I can take tidbits from their game, but there's a level where you just have to be Matty Davis, and you gotta play your own game and realize what your strengths are.
You mentioned watching a lot of hockey. Still do that? Did you do it growing up? You're obviously watching. Were you a note-taking kind of guy, or just sort of casual observations that I might try that in practice the next day? Because we know, like Demko, for example, told us once that when he was a kid, he used to actually keep a notebook when he watched hockey and make notes of some of the different things different guys would try.
I do a lot of stretching and juggling kind of thing. Like,
while you're watching?
Yeah. So I started to, as soon as I got good enough at juggling where I'd be able to just juggle and look up and watch stuff. So I do that. I do that, just kind of juggle and watch some hockey, just kind of try to, like, I think you can subconsciously pick up on a lot just watching a solid amount of hockey. And I still do watch a lot of hockey. And I mean, when you get older, you realize how hard it is and just how good you have to be. So it's something where if I can pick up any kind of little tidbit or read, then it's big.
Okay, so let me guess, you're probably a pretty good play reader.
I like to think I am.
Well, I asked because we've got a lot of goalie coaches now, Matt, telling us that kids don't watch enough hockey, and that they come to the camps and they go to the schools and they move like an NHLer. Right, they're just incredible skaters, all the different techniques. But connecting the dots, or as Mitch Korn would say, connecting the patterns on the ice, it isn't there. And a lot of them think it's because they'll watch highlight clips on YouTube or Instagram, but not actually sit down and watch games and start to subconsciously, as you say, recognize the patterns. Oh, if it's in this corner and the guy's coming off this wall and he's a lefty or a righty, here's where it's most likely to funnel.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's another thing where you'll see some young goalies just be too structured. Like, there's just too much coaching and not enough playing, because that's where you really figure it out. And that was one area where I had to battle with over the last 2 years, and it was since I was just practicing so much and working on so much stuff without getting game time. And this year there's definitely a lot of speed bumps where I'd get exposed in one area, and I mean, you just learn how to handle it, and you got to go with a growth mindset and just kind of work through it. And so I definitely would say I was too structured, and then I would be stiff and I wouldn't be able to read plays as well. And then once you get a couple more games under your belt, more experience, you just kind of soften up. It becomes more habit overall. And that's one thing that, I mean, I don't think you can really teach in goalie skates unless you really just hammer just straight game like kind of scenarios without where shooters can shoot wherever they want, shoot to score in every shot, and you play out every rebound. And yeah, you just kind of push yourself to the max without losing your technique, really.
I love it. And it's funny you said stiff. There's a goalie coach here that always likes to say tension is the enemy of goaltending, right? And so as soon as we're rigid, we can't react because we're not relaxed. I'm guessing the breathing probably helps with that too, like in terms of finding that. You said soft. When I hear soft, am I hearing right just in terms of sort of relaxed and loose?
Yeah, like if I felt stiff, I'd kind of just like give it a little shoulder shimmy like in the tunnel before I'd go out. And another drill that we would do a lot this year, as soon as I started getting beat on screens or pucks were popping out, it was I would just kind of like sit in my butterfly, and Massa would wheel around and shoot pucks towards my body and my pants, and I'd have to contain it without getting my hands involved. So that was just kind of one area where you get used to just kind of dropping your butt a little bit and getting over the puck. And it helped me a lot. Like there's a lot of times where just big whistles come, like some big whistles are hard to find. And if you can do that on the power play or whatever, it makes a big difference through screens.
Okay. So without using your hands, like were you able to not catch pucks or steer pucks? Could you use them to smother on your body? No. Okay. So now you're going to have to help me out here. How the hell do you do that? And for the record, I'm a rebound machine, so I'm looking for personal advice here, Matt. But like in order to sort of absorb pucks off the seams of your pants and off your chest and not put them back out into play, what that containment you talk about, how? What's the key?
It was a lot of just being soft and like, how do I explain this?
No, this is great.
Don't show.
Yeah, so, we're gonna put you on the ice and do some drills soon.
So like, if you get over it and say the puck's going more glove kind of elbow pant area, you get over it. Like you just drop your butt a little bit and get completely on top of it.
So like soft seams, you're kind of like you're sinking and just kind of giving it as it hits you, you're sort of like just absorbing it, making yourself a human shock absorber.
And of course, there's some pucks where you're not going to be able to do it,
right?
And like those up high chest shots, like you have to get your hands up there if you want to contain it. And I mean, it was another good thing because through screens, I would be able to just leave my hands where they were, and pucks just started hitting my hands. If they weren't going to hit me in the chest, they're going to hit my hands, and I'd be able to contain that and also just make the save on pucks I couldn't see. And that was it worked. It worked wonders. It was big.
I love that. We're gonna have to turn that into a pro drills tip. Do you use the front of the pads? Like sort of we think of that butterfly and that little triangle it creates in front of us, depending on the width and length of your pad, like the width of your butterfly flare and the length of your pads. You know, like I know Thatcher's really good at it here. So pucks that do hit the pants or the chest that he can't quite control, they end up between the knees and the back of the pads, sort of maybe not your perfect contain, like it's not on you, but it's behind the pads and controlled.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly nice when that happens. I don't know if it's really a skill that I have mastered by any means.
Working on it.
So like that's something I can definitely work on. That'd be good just for those pucks that do squirt out.
Okay, I've kept you longer than I said I would. Just walk me through what the next like you're in school, you're a class, you're taking classes through the summer, are you? What's the next step look like? Have you got some dev camps lined up? And I asked that I should have probably looked, and I apologize for not in advance. Whether even I think correct, the rules say you got to pay for your dev camp while you're still in college, things like that. What's next for you? Yeah, so I'm going to be in school until about early June. Okay. That's when our finals are, and then I'm going to stay here up until I'm actually heading to Colorado's dev camp. So pretty excited for that, and then I'll head home for a couple weeks, and then I'll come back here. And I'm also taking a class in the summer, but it's all online. So
I can be wherever I want for that.
Anyone you worked with over the years in Calgary you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot of guys. I mean, Jeff Glass. Growing up, it was a lot of World Pro goaltending with JF Martel, Derek Perfield, Mike Bergen.
All names I recognize.
Yep. Up in Edmonton, Jamie McKaig and Ian Gordon. Yeah, I mean, ATC up there was good. Ian Gordon goaltending, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
so you worked with it sounds like you had a lot of different voices, not to extend this, but tips on working with different guys. Like, how do you go about adding tools to the toolbox without maybe getting carried away with change for the sake of change? Because sometimes you go to a camp and the goalie coach, I think those guys are not the kind of coaches that would do this, but kids can go to camps. It's like, wow, they paid for this camp. I need to change something in his game so his parents think he learned something, right? Like that happened.
Yeah. I think it's just kind of whatever they tell you, you test it out and you give it the old college try. And if you don't like it, then that's fine. Then you don't have to do it. But if you do like it, then at least you gave it the shot. Now it's starting to become more habit and you can easily implement it. So it's just kind of filtering through just trial and error.
Love it. Okay. Let you go, but thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I know our audience is going to as well. Best of luck this summer at Dev Camp with Colorado. I'm guessing you'll get a little dose of... Have you been to a Dev Camp before?
I haven't, not.
This is first one. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Okay, so a little dose of UC Parkilla there with Colorado as well, the goaltending coach who we know from... So now you talked about the hands and the hand position. Now you're going to get a dose of Finnish coaching and Finnish hands.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Okay, well, have a great summer. Like I said, really appreciate the time. Congratulations on the national championship and most outstanding player award there. And just like I said, have a great summer. And thank you so much for spending the time with In Goal Magazine.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
How many people were sitting there sort of acting that out and not using your hands, but absorbing the puck on your pants or chest protector? I know I was.
So was Matt trying to explain it with the body language on the video because we were on a Zoom and I was trying to, so both of us were too.
You could tell. Yeah. I texted Woody right away. It's as I was saying to you guys, it's something that we actually learned from Eli Wilson. Funny enough, I was sitting in Eli's kitchen as I was editing that feature interview. Eli not at home, but was generously sharing his home with us while we were up in Kelowna. And mentioned to Woody, it's something that we learned at Eli's camp, where he actually began it as a drill, as an experiment for a kid who was struggling with that skill of trapping a puck against his body. He said, let's just try it without your hands at all. And if we can then get the body to do it, then maybe we can bring the hands in afterwards. And super successful to the point that it's become a regular drill at his camps. It's a regular drill I use with the goalies I coach. And lo and behold, we then, of course, see a lot of goalies using it in games. Found a lot of highlights of Carey Price doing it. I've got highlights of my son in the Western League doing it. It's a very good skill when you are in a screen situation and you're just trying to take up as much space as you can. So you just get in there, you find the puck hits you, and now you've got that built-in ability, the non-thinking ability to just control that puck. And that doesn't mean you can't get your hands involved afterwards once it's hit you, but having that ability to do it without them is a great skill to have.
I was thinking about tying Woody's hands behind his back and letting him do it.
I might have more rebound control that way than I do with my hands. Like I said,
I'd like to know if Woody's able to do anything if we put some duct tape over his mouth and he can't speak. I think then he might be apoplectic.
Whoa. That would throw him off.
That was kind of mean.
It was. I'm sorry, Woody. I shouldn't be so mean.
I will say, absorbing the puck without your hands being involved sounds like a lot better idea than just using your head to direct the puck. We're seeing this a couple of times in the second round, and I'm not encouraged by this. I think it's getting too much attention.
Hey,
do it.
Devin Cooley taught us how to seal that top corner in the RVH by putting your head over your shoulder like you're sleeping on a pillow. He does it on purpose now. These masks are good, Darren.
I saw Henrik Lundqvist talking about it, showing the example of, it was Georgiev, wasn't it, that did it the other night? And It was interesting. I liked his insight that he could explain to people, well, if you take it here, it's not so bad. If you take it off the side of the head like he did in that example, that one really smarts. It was interesting to see him talk about that. My kid then did it in a game last year, had a puck going high, and I don't know why. He literally jumped to head this puck. It got knocked out of the air halfway to the net and went down underneath him and into the net, and thank God it was a high stick. But there are dangers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there are dangers to it.
Never reach, boys. Never reach.
It does show your control in the sense of you're not ducking. So that's positive. Like you're reacting to the puck. I look at it as a slight positive there, but just
the side of the head is risky. The side of the head is risky. We know goalies that have had ruptured eardrums from taking pucks flush off the side of the mask into the ear hole and creates enough pressure to actually blow out an eardrum. Curtis Sanford, goalie coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs, had it happen in a warm-up. Somebody shot from a side he wasn't looking at, got him in the ear hole and ruptured his eardrum. So that's no fun. We don't recommend that.
It was one of the first Net 360s we went to up in Kelowna, Kevin. I don't know if you remember. They do a few little sort of experimental things with the goalie sometimes just at the beginning of the skate, and a coach brought out a bunch of those orange foam pucks and started firing them at the goalies' heads to get them to control it. We didn't get a chance to talk to them about what the motivation behind that was. It sure looked like fun to be able to do that. I wonder if the day will come when they start using pucks that are just a little bit safer in practice for the players to work on that skill with the goaltenders. Or I've even mused about whether we're going to see goaltenders in those rugby scrum caps just for a little extra protection in practice, the kind of thing that NFL players are using now in practice as well.
Hey, so just real quick to tie up, because we said we were going to get out of here and nobody wants to listen to me anymore. But you talked about Georgiev and you talked about Lundqvist. We just give a shout out to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander Georgiev, after giving up 7 in the first game of the playoffs and hearing how he was going to be the problem and all the negative attention focused on the crease in Colorado, was damn good from that point on for the Colorado Avalanche. I really liked his game. The underlying numbers supported it. And how good has Henrik Lundqvist been on that panel in the intermissions for TNT? Yeah. Now, we're going to have a little education on proper reverse VH, because Hank criticizes RVH, and yet most of the RVHs he's criticizing are not properly executed, and Hank never used RVH. But I just love his breakdowns and analysis, and he's so good at it. And I thought Georgiev, went from being a major story in Colorado, probably not talked about enough for how good he was after that point.
Yeah, the dynamic of that panel with Hank is really, really good. And
he's educating the masses.
He's educating, but he's not just blatantly defending either. Like he's admitting there's some fault along the way by the goaltenders, and not just rolling over and falling on the card. The goaltending,
like I do.
Yeah, well, like all of us do to a certain extent. Hey, you guys have a great week. Looking forward to the next conversation, which will involve the Final Four, the 2 conference championship series in the National Hockey League, as we continue down this path. They're also following the World Championship, the American Hockey League. So we'll bring you all the stories from the wide world of goaltending on In Goal Radio, the podcast.